There we go. Good morning, everyone. We are live. It's Tuesday, March 12th. I hope everyone had a wonderful and productive town meeting week. We have some bills to make final decisions on this week, beginning with S-247, relating to the Vermont Employment Growth Incentive. We have a possible vote on the agenda. So I'm sorry I missed Friday before last discussion on it, but hopefully people had all their questions answered.
Well, we just began on Friday.
Okay. So we haven't, we're doing a final walkthrough. Preliminarily, did people want other witnesses on this issue? But then the many you have.
So we should just, fill
Yeah.
you in a bit, which is, Joan, we talked about the elimination of the sunset, which I don't know how people feel, but I feel strongly we should be eliminating the sunset. And then Joan presented for the first time the loan forgiveness program, the forgivable loan program for small businesses that is a partnership with Vita. So we hadn't heard from Vita, and I think we were going to hear from Cassie. I thought that was the discussion. Yep, maybe.
Well,
no.
Rick will be in charge of that. This is a very short bill. Does that
It is
require
at the
legislative
moment.
language?
It's at the moment, it's short
Okay.
without the loan forgiveness program, but I think the loan forgiveness program adds quite a bit to it.
So for example,
Yes.
council,
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
if the committee wants to add that language, it was not clear that needed to be done
Okay.
or wanted to be done.
Okay.
So yeah, currently S-247 is just a repeal of the sunset. And I
Pretty
did,
fast walkthrough.
yeah, I did a walkthrough.
Yeah.
You blinked, you missed it, last week.
Okay.
And there was very little discussion. Most of the discussion was about the commissioner's proposed legislation.
Did she send you language for that?
Yes,
Well, it's language that was sent to me through the House, and that goes in the House currently. And that same language was,
708,
that sounds correct.
is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
But is 708 moving before crossover?
No.
Okay.
So they're
So
hoping,
the language exists.
they're just getting, again, planting the seed.
Okay.
And they're hoping, I think we will get this over in by the end of this week.
Where does I hope we could do it today. Where does the rest of the committee stand on that provision being added?
The provision regarding the forgivable loan,
Forgivable
Let me
loan,
just get a copy.
yeah.
Because I think.
as opposed to.
I can.
Why don't we
pull
walk
Oh, that would be
through it?
great.
Put it up.
Let's, yeah, put it up.
Right.
Why don't we make this useful in that regard? We might return to this before noon then.
Yeah,
With Cassie or somebody in the witness chair. Senator Harris.
thank you, Madam Chair. So we had a presentation from the commissioner that was very detailed, and I recommend that I don't know if we can highlight it on our website, just make sure that it's
Okay.
on our website.
Yeah.
And one of my takeaways was the efficiency
Mhm.
and the low cost of our of veggie, which is our only job creation incentive program versus the same program or similar program in other
Yeah.
states. And so the low cost and the fact that the employers don't receive the funds until they've actually created the jobs,
Right.
and a analysis has been done on those jobs, that leads me to support the continuation
Okay.
of veggie.
And you support the elimination of the
The
sunset.
elimination of the sunset, right?
And-
Double negative.
You'd like to hear, what more do you need to hear about the forgivable loan?
Just personal, the forgivable loan sounds like a good idea. It's, my understanding is that the incentive or the reason for it is, the tax code.
Yeah.
So,
Is the partnership with Vita a new thing, Senator Clarkson? Is that, I mean, Vita's done a great job with some of our
No,
other.
it would be a new program for me, so that's a good
Okay.
reason that Cassie weigh in and
Yes,
see how she feels.
okay.
and
My understanding is that she is supportive of it, but it would be good for the record.
Magali, can you see if Kathy Polkamus
Isn't there?
is available today between 11:30 and noon?
And there's a higher level of risk
Mhm.
because we would need to appropriate funding to VITA to protect their funding
Mm-hmm.
in case folks receive the forgivable loan and then don't.
What was the amount?
It was,
It wasn't much, it was like
It was, yeah.
It was $350,000 to cover Vita losses possibly for a
Okay,
3-year period.
so just the
And it's
risk management.
currently in the governor's budget.
Okay,
So,
oh, okay,
It's in the governor's budget
Okay.
and,
okay.
it's really specifically targeted to small businesses of under 50 employees.
Mhm.
Great. I'm fairly supportive of it. I think it's a great idea, but it would be great to hear from Cassie.
So logistically, because we have a very full week, I'd still like to vote this out today. If we could get Cassie to say affirmatively that she supports this language that is existing.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
So this is, forgive me, this is House 708 1.1.
Yeah, that's right.
It needs to be edited a little bit.
Okay.
Because I kind of stopped.
Yeah.
When I was told this bill's not
Yes.
gonna move, I stopped working on it.
Yeah,
But the general language is here, and it wouldn't take much for me to get it
okay.
ready for a vote, but,
We looked at it on
Okay.
Friday.
right.
So I'd like to let you answer any questions about this language and then let you go to work on the inclusion of this in our bill. Senator Brock, anything you wanna share?
Not really at this point. My wife obviously sees the file.
Okay, but you agree with trying to include this in a draft that we look at today for a vote?
I'd like to look at it, you know.
Okay. Have people walked through this language?
No, we
Okay.
mostly, we listened to a number of people who were very supportive of getting rid of the sunset
Uh-huh.
and, who we didn't walk through this language. I mean, we mostly.
So then can we hit the highlights of this and then,
Sure.
unless people have grave concerns, we let Rick go
Yeah.
and draft it.
And again, I'm not totally ready to walk through this
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
but
sorry.
I wrote it, so
Yeah.
I'm familiar enough. I can take a second.
Coming back
Yeah.
as you look at it.
Well,
Coming back.
Yes, so the basic here is that, there's the creation of a second track to Veggie currently
Mhm.
is a grant, where you get this sum of money based on capital investments or whatever.
Mhm.
So the idea is to create a forgivable loan track, so you can apply for either or, you can't get
Right.
both.
Okay.
The forgivable loan track, like, Senator Clarkson said, has under 50 employees.
Mhm.
And you can do two different types of loans. You can do a payroll loan, or you can do a capital investment loan.
Mhm.
I'll show you what I'm going to.
My pet issue has been trying to allow housing to be included as a capital investment.
I'm not sure it fits the veggie.
Platform test.
Anyhow, I'll let it go for now. They agreed, but that's okay. We'll just try to do this. If people agree. They got a child here, it looks like.
yeah, I really like
That's
to see
already,
this.
that was in there before.
I think.
Oh, it's just
Well-
underlined just as a grammar
Grammar, yeah. Yeah.
issue, okay.
That was there. Look, there's some changes here. This 2 years, it was 4 years. I highlighted that. I gotta go back to my notes to see why I highlighted that.
Mhm.
So, again, you can apply for two things. You can apply for the direct cash payment, which is the current incentive that is Veggie, or you apply for a forgivable loan incentive through VITA,
Mhm.
provided you're a qualifying business, meaning you have under 50 employees. For a forgivable loan incentive, in the application, you specify a payroll performance requirement, you specify a jobs performance requirement, or a capital investment performance requirement, or both. And provide any other information the council requires to evaluate the application under the subchapter. So it's kind of giving that's a way to
Yeah.
make their own application the way they want to make that application.
Mhm.
But you can certainly add more departments to it. Down.
Senator Harris.
Oh, I'm just waiting to see if there's any sort of interim payment on the forgivable loan, just to make sure that the business is actually functioning and to know earlier if there's going to be a problem. I mean, it wouldn't be the entire loan payment or a standard loan payment, but it would just be something to show that they're,
You mean to get it going at the business?
well, just to show that they have some skin in the game, because that's part of the great thing about veggie is that the business performs before they get the
Right, but that's before they even apply.
right. So if there's some sort of minimum loan payment that they would make if they're going to get the loan, just to have more of a requirement than just,
But this is protecting the state in a way, instead of giving upfront cash payment to a business and then clawing it back in case they don't reach their goals. This instead provides a loan in incremental ways, is sort of
Well,
how I understood it.
actually, those are the details I wanna understand.
Yeah,
And we're getting to it, because yeah, at the very end, you don't get the loan forgiven unless you've done X, Y, Z. So-
Right, but when do you
yeah.
actually receive the payment of the loan, or
It's not-
the loan itself?
Well,
I
yeah,
had the impression you got that upfront.
with the cash payments you do, but not,
well, and you also, I mean, it's a loan, right? So you do get the money up front, but you are making payments on that loan at the end. At the end, if you meet the requirements, where you get that?
Well, that's what I wanna
Maybe that'll help.
Just so people are aware, I've asked Magali to see if Kathy and Joan are available at 8:30 tomorrow morning to finish this up. We can't take any more time away from other issues. It's a little too risky. So if Cassie and Joan are available, you may have a few clarifying questions for them at that time that Rick can't answer as ledge counsel, but doing your best. Like you said, this is not language you've spent a lot of time.
It's been about a month, but no, I can, generally speaking, and I can also bring up concerns that the House Committee had if you'd like.
That'd be, yeah.
Let me finish maybe.
yeah,
and
let's
Yeah.
go through it.
So this is now, we're at the forgivable loan incentive, setting out the criteria. VITA shall provide the underwriting. VITA shall establish loan loss reserves, which shall be supported by funds appropriated by the General Assembly for this purpose. A business denied a forgivable loan may apply for other incentives, meaning direct cash. A qualifying business is not eligible for a forgivable loan incentive if it has another incentive pending, meaning the direct cash payment incentive.
Right.
To calculate the loan incentive, subsection B, the council shall multiply the number of full-time employees of a qualifying business by a maximum of $5,000, with a maximum total award of $200,000, and take the lesser of 20% of total capital investments made by the qualifying business, or $1 million. A qualifying, here's Senator, one question here. A qualifying business that is approved for a loan and receives the funds shall make monthly interest payments on the loan at a rate determined by VITA during the initial 3 years of the loan term and pursuant to the loan agreement. Department of Taxes shall verify the total amount of increase from base payroll and full-time employment account of the qualifying business during the initial 3 years of the loan term. That's to ensure that they don't, if you have 25 full-time employees when you get the loan, this legislation does not want the business to lower their payroll. If you do that, then you lose the forgivable part of it.
Well, it undermines the whole part of the program.
Right.
Or even if you do the capital investment, they still don't want you to lose payroll during that time.
This is all about big brain.
The VITA shall verify the total amount of capital investment during the 3 years of the loan term. The Department of Taxes shall not approve the forgiveness of a loan to a qualifying business pursuant to the subchapter unless it finds at the end of the 3 years, VITA has verified that the qualifying business has made the required amount, if any, of capital investment agreed in the loan agreement, and at the end of the 3 years, the qualifying business has satisfied the payroll performance requirement pursuant to the subchapter and has agreed in the loan agreement. And upon verification that they've met those terms, the Department of Taxes shall pay VITA for the full amount of the loan. We'll skip the direct cash portion, that's not changed.
But again, just for Wendy's, as we think about this, and the options, this is one option, and they've paid over installments, and the difference between this and the loan payment and the loan forgivable loan program is, I think, would be great. So this is,
I thought they didn't get the direct cash until after.
they get it in installments, I believe. Over,
But if it's a forgivable loan, it can be clawed back.
could be clawed back now if they fail.
Right.
There are, so we're in the section now of the award year section, so for the direct cash, you have to meet certain performance requirements. And that's based on whatever you and the contract between you and, I guess it's Veggie or whoever the council, I suppose. So if you meet the performance requirements, then you get that lump sum each year. So for year one, a business has, I think this is old language, a business has, from the date it commenced its proposed economic activity through December 31st that year, plus 2 additional years to meet the performance requirements specified for award year one. A business that does not meet these requirements within the period becomes ineligible to earn incentives for the award year and all remaining years. So you do get a portion of that award, but if you don't meet the performance requirements, you're not eligible for years 2, 3, and so on.
What's the clawback provision look like now for the forgivable loan?
Oh,
Well, but so it's not really,
get the money.
it's not a clawback, you would owe the loan, you would pay back, not just,
Mhm.
so you're paying interest
Right.
already, okay?
So, but it says somewhere in there, like, the loan is not forgivable if you don't meet the
Yeah, so right here, it
Okay.
says here, the department shall not approve
forgiveness,
the,
okay, right.
yeah.
Great.
And you have to meet these certain requirements.
Okay, perfect.
But in terms of the loan, you've got to pay back the loan, whatever term is involved, in the event that you're not able to get that loan forgiven. The
Right.
question is, at what point, what happens if the business goes out of business? In other words, one of the reasons that we changed Veggie program back in 2006, as I remember, was because we had people getting money from the Veggie program and then going out of business or moving out of state or whatever and not paying back the money they were given. And so the whole goal of those changes was to ensure that didn't happen. And it was to ensure that we did not give any money to a business under this program unless the goals were met and the jobs were created for the period of time involved. So it was a cap in the fact payment. Now, as we talk about forgivable loan, it looks like we're going back to where we were before to some extent. And my concern is, are we going to get stuck again with businesses that don't create the jobs, don't do what they said, they've got the money and they're gone? Now, I know we're putting money up in order to ensure that we are protecting
Loss, against loss.
to some extent from that loss, but it's still a loss and we're putting money out to in effect mitigate that loss.
Right.
Yeah.
What I would imagine is if you have loan terms, that's becomes sort of a matter of litigation if you don't pay back the loan.
No, we had terms
Go out
in
of
the
business.
original Veggie contract that they would do it too, and the
Right.
same kind of litigation
Right.
resulted.
So
No, you're right, it is a higher risk. If it wasn't a higher risk, we wouldn't be talking about putting this money aside.
right, so that's why we have
Yes.
this as a cushion and protection. So I think we need Cassie and Joan to discuss
Yes,
that.
so I guess one piece of information that's critical is Cassie can't be here today. I've just texted Joan to be like, it would be great if you could be here for the next 15 minutes because she has an away message, which I find concerning because they knew we were taking this bill up. So if we can't get them today, we're looking at 8:30 tomorrow, and to try to vote this bill out tomorrow morning. I will try to get this question answered and encourage them to watch this testimony. Andrew, were you here on this issue? Is there something you wanted to say?
Andrew Brewer with Downs Rackland and Martin. No, I think Senator Clarkson covered it. There's, the question is this an option that businesses would take advantage of?
Mhm.
And it's hard to tell.
Mhm.
Traditional veggie, you go through the process and you might get some award, you might get all of the award. takes several years.
And it's a big hurdle for small business.
It's a big hurdle for small businesses. This is all upfront, but there's a risk. If you
Mhm.
don't get your targets, you're gonna have a loan there. So it's hard to tell. The witnesses that were here, they had Sean Lawson from
Mhm.
11%.
We have actually
You know,
great witnesses.
Yeah, really great witnesses. And it's hard to tell if any of them would have taken advantage of that.
Mhm.
Cassie is away, I think, until tomorrow.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
and I think she will, she'll support it, but I think she'll have some concerns that she wants to share about how it might work.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
But or that's been existing in veggie for a long time, does that apply to this?
It would.
Yeah,
And that's part of that's part of her concern is,
That's,
Mm,
you
that's
know,
sort of mine
yeah,
too.
that's part of her concern, but not that she can't overcome it, but,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so I do
Yeah.
not want to speak for Cassie.
Yes, right,
Yes, but
I
it would
do-
be good to have
Just
her.
underscoring that it's
Yes.
to help small businesses that have not been able to.
That's exactly right.
And I think the additional help is that it's particularly for small businesses that have maybe less staff to be focused on this is it's a simpler application. It's a
Mhm.
simpler and more seamless way application.
Is Joan coming in as well, or?
We've asked for both her and
Well,
Kathy.
the thing the more I think about it, the more I'm concerned about the but for.
Mhm.
The but for is being
Right,
applied in the traditional sense here. Because, small businesses are, the normal but for is, unless you give me this money now,
right,
I'm going to put these jobs someplace else.
Yes.
Well, a small business that needs a loan to do it, where are
Right.
you gonna put the business?
well, so I think it is a policy question of, does the but for metric make it really hard for a small business to participate? Is there a but for in this right now? Does it look exactly the same?
Well,
Is the
Dominique
big
Jones and
question.
I think the whole point of this effort is to make it easier for small businesses to participate. So that's.
And they
the
would
premise
still have to
of it.
demonstrate that they're adding to payroll.
That's right.
No.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's right.
Well, if they choose
Or
that,
CapEx.
yeah, if they choose
Or
that,
capital.
they just cannot
Yeah.
reduce payroll. No
Right.
matter what option they choose, they cannot reduce payroll.
Right,
That's the.
so there's an implied but for that they are they have to go above and beyond their status quo, or the loan isn't forgivable. But they might not have to meet the same but for standard about moving things out of state, because that's what's kept small
But
businesses from being.
that's not how it reads, is it?
I don't know, that's a
I think,
drafting.
So,
how does it?
phrase, so the but for, phrase the question, what exactly do you, are you asking?
We would not create these
Oh, I see
jobs
what you mean.
but
Okay,
for the
but
receipt of
this.
these funds from you. And the implication always is
Yeah.
we would create the jobs someplace else.
That is generally, it's not in this, that's generally. I
But isn't that implicit in,
It's might be on the, I've seen it before, it might be on the Veggie website, I've
Yeah.
seen that language before. But how do you legally hold someone accountable to that?
well,
We would not have
that
done
is what
this
the
if
due
not.
diligence process.
Yeah,
For granting the veggie grant in the first place is based upon.
I think,
And that has been, that's been the auditor's complaint, almost since, President Auditor has been in office, that there's no way to verify that would happen. And I remember looking at veggie years ago and asking businesses, why don't you have veggie loans? Because people around you do, and the answer is, we won't lie. That's what I heard time and time again.
I assume it's part of the application process that you agree that this is true, that.
And you have to
provide
show to the
business.
group that is evaluating it that you have a potential plan for doing this business activity in some other state or some other locality, in the event that you can't do it here. That was critical. And I just want to make sure, is that still going on? And how would it apply to a small business loan like this? Which just frankly doesn't seem practical.
So it's not in this bill, but if that's something that.
But
you
if
wanna-
it's in the underlying
I think it's
veggie
in
bill,
the
this is
under-
attached.
Let's clarify that with Joan, because I think the whole, anyway, part of the point.
okay, so
One
I'm
last-
just gonna say, I think a bigger meta question is we're talking about a very small amount of money to begin with.
Right.
And we're talking about two organizations that whose due diligence we tend to trust, especially VITA. And do we want to look at this language tomorrow or not? I think is the bigger question. I'm hearing from Joan and Cassie what their availability looks like tomorrow. It is crossover week. So the options we have on the table for 8:30 tomorrow morning are to move just the sunset repeal, or to look at this language with or without both of them. Joan has said she's not available till 11. My message back to her is then this piece may not go in if
Well,
she's
the
not
answer
available.
is there another bill that we've got, an omnibus bill or some other bill that the second piece can be attached to?
Not
I'm not
germane for
I'm
crossover
not-
week.
particularly interested in voting on something I don't understand.
Okay, so
Well,
our communication back to them will be, we are only moving the sunset repeal tomorrow at 8:30 unless they can be available to answer questions to our satisfaction. And we'll find out the answer to that before 8:30 tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I will encourage them to speak with people individually if that's helpful. Senator Clarkson, I encourage you, if this piece is something you care about, to get it teed up for 8:30
Is there a
tomorrow
reason,
morning.
Madam Chair, we couldn't hear from Joan at 11?
Tomorrow,
No, today. Is that
she's
what you-
not neither of them are available today,
Oh,
which I find concerning.
Yeah.
Because this has been on the agenda. But we only have 8:30 tomorrow morning, so we're either, and they can deal with this second piece in the House if they'd like
And
to.
Joan can be here at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Not right now. And then what's being
Not right
communicated
now, I mean.
back to her is 8:30 tomorrow morning is when we're taking this up, and our options are the sunset only or.
Or this language if we can come to a landing place.
Yes,
Quick.
so I will keep in communication with the committee about that, but I hear and understand that if that piece isn't ready, it's not ready and it's crossover
But,
week.
but
and
she
that's the
may have a
timeframe.
very good answer to that, so
Right.
let's, I would be open to, because I actually think this, she presented a fairly compelling case about how. it
So
was a good
I would
option,
ask
so-
Senator Clarkson that if you can do anything to tee it up, private conversations with members of this committee, getting Joan to get something in writing or getting her to be
Yeah.
here at 8:30 tomorrow, that's what we're.
I asked her about the platform, right, just now.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. Thank you, Rick,
You're
for doing this on short notice.
I'll be ready.
So we'll communicate with you as well about 8:30 tomorrow morning and what we want to have ready. So don't do any extra work until we communicated that.
I'm ready to work this week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just before he
Yes.
disappeared.
Yeah,
Was there language after your work in the House on this? Was there language with Joan and Cassie that was gonna improve the discussion that you wanted to incorporate?
In the House,
Yeah,
yes, Joe and I talked on the phone after the walkthrough with the committee, the House committee had some concerns. And there was some clarification on language, and I understood what she wanted. I just don't know if that's what the committee, if they had heard it again, they never heard it again. But if they had heard it again, I don't know if that would have satisfied what they wanted.
okay.
So there were been a few changes.
Then let's
I
wait
think-
and just hear from Joan.
Okay.
And hopefully Cassie will be.
And this, what you saw was mostly after Joan and I spoke. I made some changes that
Okay, great,
okay.
good. That's, I guess, what I'm.
This is pretty much what the version is,
Okay.
that we talked about.
Everyone in this room feels comfortable voting tomorrow on the repeal of the sunset.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where we are, and thank you, Rick. We'll see you at lunch. I'll see you at lunch.
Sorry,
Uh,
you could pass back 246. I got the wrong number. This little short thing I gave you.
Okay, so,
I'll
we're
sit
gonna,
back.
we're gonna switch gears to F 271. Regarding charging of electric vehicles and its connection to the landlord tenant law. Our first witness is Bronwyn Cook. Thank you. We don't often see you in this committee. We will spend the rest of the time on this. The committee discussion was in case we needed to return to anything. But I will frame this up by saying the question on the table for this bill is if it lives to see Friday and crossover. And I think the question we need to answer today is, does this bill in its current form or with any changes you might suggest, empower tenants in a new way to take advantage of available subsidy so that they can be leading the process of installing new EV charging infrastructure with the cooperation of their landlord. And if we do move forward with this, we're looking at making it fully, removing the exemption for properties of 1 to 4 units, because we feel like that would probably be where a lot of this would happen. A landlord who says, you know, this is forward thinking, this benefits me, it looks like the tenant is being proactive and I'm gonna kick in a little bit of money to have this infrastructure permanently. That's what we're looking at. It sounds like you already have an existing program, and the question is, you know, does this add value to your existing program by empowering the tenant?
or the other ways to empower the tenant that aren't conceived of in this way.
If that's true, then we don't have time to rewrite the bill, so we'd be looking at small modifications, but we can't spend time on it on Friday unless we have some clear answers today.
Right.
Those are great questions. Thank you for having me here. It is different to be here because
Yes,
this is like this weird mash of like transportation stuff, but housing stuff, so.
yeah,
Well, I'm happy.
it's a new wrinkle in our brains as well.
It goes along with the sort of what we're doing generally this session, which is harmonizing things, harmonizing city work, we're all, yay, you know, it's.
So I'm gonna get my screen sharing going.
You have not missed any vote. And I'll fill you in a little bit later on the veggie. We just started on the EV though.
Ah, okay, I did get a copy of the
Oh, great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so for the record, my name is Bronwyn Cook. I'm a community planning and policy manager in Department of Housing and Community Development. I have some slides here, yes, to share information on the program that we have. So I would like to just kind of give you the overview of what that program is doing. And then, you know, a conversation about what this bill means. I do have a couple of concerns for how the bill might impact how our program is administered. But we can talk about that as we go. And this is showing up correctly for everybody, I take it?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So just quick, I think you guys know who we are, Community Planning and Revitalization. So we run the Downtown Designation Program. I think that's usually what we're talking about over here. But we also have this body of work around trying to get access to EV charging for residents of multi-unit properties. So we've been doing EVSE work for quite some time, long before I showed up, since 2014. Most of our work prior to me taking out some of the stuff has been mostly on public charging, so fast charging, municipal parking lots, really public facing charging, which is great and very needed. But in 2022, we picked up some work to try and figure out how to address this challenge of getting folks who live in multi-unit properties access to home charging. Home charging is by far and away expected to be where most people charge conveniently, affordably.
Absolutely.
Right. So we fully recognize that that is really critical and important.
So here,
Just on this slide, if you have information on if the rental proportion is similar to this proportion, that would be really relevant.
It would, because this does not show the fact that like single family homes, for example, are in fact sometimes rented, so it's not.
Right.
Yeah, so this is not necessarily that split. Although I will say, when we have thought about this program, we are thinking about where there are the highest barriers for the technology itself.
okay,
So while a renter is gonna face challenges regardless of what type of property they are in, I would still say that a renter that's in a single family home, those technology solutions, the cost solutions are still a little bit more straightforward than the types of solutions that exist for a multi-unit property, again, regardless of whether they're a renter or a condo owner. So we think of it this way because it's the technological solutions is just more complicated and typically more costly than the solutions that exist in a single family property.
just to understand this chart, this is showing the types of housing we have in Vermont that people live in, and you operate in the green slice right now.
We operate in anything that is multi-unit that does not have attached dedicated garage, essentially. So I will tell I'll tell you a little bit more about who is eligible for our program.
Oh, are we missing some of the eligibility?
No, because our program is not just for renters, it is also for like a condo association, so people who own their property can apply for this.
Okay,
As long as they do not have, so for example, like townhomes, right? Townhomes have they sometimes can have an HOA, I believe, right? And so they have a dedicated garage parking space. And so when it comes to EDSE, the technology is a lot more like a single family
Yes.
home, and so they don't have the same barriers to access.
So who does the 10 or more unit eligibility apply to?
For our program, the eligibility is based on the number of units and the parking. It just can't be parking that is dedicated, a garage parking space that is attached to the.
I'm just curious why I'm seeing eligibility 10 or more units.
This is for our pilot program. It was only for.
Oh, this was the past.
This was the first program that we ran to try and like suss this out,
Got it.
test this out.
Okay, Senator Harris.
I just want to make it to the point that, yes, I agree that the technical requirements are much easier in a single family. But because Vermont has, in terms of the rental universe, it seems, and I don't know that if this is true, that much of it is single family, more than in other states. Like we have a higher proportion of single family rental, which is why I would propose, I would advocate for single family rental to be included, even though it is technologically easier, but legally it has the same challenge.
Yeah, I think housingdata.org is the place that has the most expansive data that I'm aware of. I haven't looked at it in terms of single family rental. I was just explaining why this is.
And I understand.
It would be
And it's actually really helpful to show how few units are in building large multifamily, which we call 10 plus.
Right, which is why I'll see in a second, when we ran the pilot, I think Amy is gonna provide some testimony, she was one of our grantees for that pilot. In our sort of retooled version of the program, we've expanded eligibility to 3+ units.
Okay.
We can talk about that in a second.
Did you, when you ran with all of the pilot and the rest of your programs, did you verify that there was a family with an EV, with an electric vehicle? It was for the future. I mean,
The program did not require, so neither in the pilot or in the current program does it require that there be an EV owner currently in the property. The idea is the chicken and egg, right? It's tenants, renters, residents living in condos. It's gonna be hard for them to even consider an EV until they can see that.
I totally agree. I'm curious from CHT if there's EV charging infrastructure we paid for that no one's using, or someone's tried to combine it with other incentives to help low-income families get an electric vehicle.
We do try and make sure that all of the folks who received our grant, particularly the multi-unit, the affordable multi-unit grant program, that we paired them up with the Mileage Smart program, with the vehicle trade-in programs that are run by VTrans, so that residents have the combination of, I can see the charger, and now I can see that there's this other program. And that is part of the intent of the program was there's a lot of great incentives out there for the vehicles themselves. It is not possible to really consider accessing that until you also can see that you also have charging.
Right. Senator Clark, say quickly, because we should get to the heart of it, which is where you might have disagreement.
Right, no, the 39 awarded, the grants were awarded to landlords, to building owners.
Correct,
yeah.
Yeah, so the original pilot program was, the property owners that were eligible were affordable housing providers. We had great uptake, the 1 million, we were oversubscribed on applications, so it ended up being competitive. We made awards, they are still in process, I'd say a little less than half at this point have completed the project. And, the part of the pilot was to learn, right? What are property owners, help us figure out what are the best case practices here for providing EV charging when you have shared parking, not dedicated parking, when the parking is really far from the meter, when, so help us figure out what these solutions are that work for you and also potentially work for yours.
How many of these were private landlords versus potentially affordable housing?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd say the majority were, the far majority of the locations were through Champlain Housing Trust and Cathedral Square. Our grantees I can send it around after, but there's a link to all of our past grantees and it shows all the housing providers.
But you believe at least a couple were private landlords and they gave you different or useful information about what private landlords need to participate?
Yeah, there was at least one private landlord who was providing, and the the definition for affordable was at least 50% of units, being, in a bracket. And it's really quick, I just want to point out that one of the things we were really excited is just how many, you know,
Yeah,
by doing
right.
this, how many tenants can then potentially gain access to
Right,
this.
if
and-
they have an electric vehicle, which,
Or if they don't, they can at least see the station and say,
Yes.
oh, now I can.
Yes.
Right, so that was really exciting
Right.
for us to see that. And I will say a big portion of this is Burlington Electric. They received a
Yeah.
grant and they were putting charging stations in the public right of way
and we.
where that's accessible to anybody who lives within the
Right.
neighborhood, which is great.
Yes.
Quick, did you do any then marketing to the tenants in those buildings, in those,
That's what we just talked about.
okay, to let them know this was available?
We did it as part of the grant application process. We did ask the applicants and property owners, you know, how are you planning on marketing this and educating tenants about this? And they gave us, you know, an overview of how they're,
And how much uptake was?
and how much the uptake.
Uptake.
And you know, this is early days, so I think Champlain's gonna be here, talking about their experience with it. I will say, so some of, you know, one of the things we need to do, and again, this is early days, is start gathering information and data on the use of all of the equipment that we've put in the ground. But I would say measure of success at this point for this pilot program is not necessarily
Mhm.
if you're seeing, you know, 40% usage of that part, because it's, you know, it's
Right.
gonna take some time before this equipment in the ground can send that signal to
Yes.
tenants on and on. One of the, again, one of the key purposes of the pilot was to get a sense of, okay, what does this really cost for these types of
Mhm.
solutions for going to these types of properties? For the 10+ that we were working in with the pilot program, we were seeing roughly 26,000 to install. This is for a dual head, so 2 level 2 ports on a station. That's what
Right.
most property owners chose, because
Yeah.
there's some economies of scale, some efficiency there. But I will say, one of the things we have learned is that about a third of that cost is for the hardware itself, the actual equipment.
Mhm.
2/3 of that is just, it's panel upgrades, it's other electrical work, it's trenching, it's site work, it's labor.
Yeah.
So the majority of the cost to install these in these types of properties typically is not the piece of equipment itself, it's everything else that needs to
Right.
happen to.
So in terms of cost per location, do you ever find it of value to say, okay, we're gonna do 5 level 1 charging stations, and that's roughly equivalent to 1 level 2 with 2 ports.
Mhm.
So that gives us a different type of value. Is that a calculation you all are considering?
It is-
Not level 1 is like, it takes all day.
Well,
Yeah.
the question is, are you ever installing level 1 at all?
Okay, well, not to get into an argument with
Yeah.
Senator Clarkson, but so one of the things that, and I think some of my, we have an interagency working group that helps us make decisions about how to run these programs.
Yeah.
And they would all laugh knowing that I've been a strong advocate for level 1, if for no other reason than
So we're not getting an argument.
level 1
You're
is
shaking.
the lowest cost.
Yeah.
Lowest barrier, and for a lot of folks, like I think of myself, I'm a tenant, I rent,
Mm-hmm.
I live in Barrie, I work in Montpelier, and I drive into the office maybe twice a week.
Yeah.
A level 1 is actually fine for me if that's all my property owner would be willing to do to
Right.
overcome that barrier of like, this is new, this is expensive.
Mhm.
$26,000, I can tell you, is not gonna be attractive to my landlord.
Yes.
But a lower cost level 1, maybe. So I've advocated for continuing to allow level 1 to be eligible under this
Mhm.
program. And it's not eating up a lot of money. It
I-
doesn't require a panel upgrade.
Right, that sounds like very valuable on the ground information to have. Senator Brock.
Just going back to one of your earlier slides, in which you mentioned this pilot involved 18 locations, as I recall in the slide, but it served something like 6,300 people. And I'm trying to reconcile those numbers, given the amount of time it takes to charge. Is it just that it's close to 6,000 people in the neighborhood, but only 4 actually use it, or?
So yeah, so that equipment that was installed would not be enough to serve all 6,000.
Okay.
But that equipment installed is sending all those people the signal that I could consider a charging an EV, because I can see a charging station that I
But
would
if they
have
all got
access
an
to.
EV at
If they all
some
did, we
point,
would need a
like,
lot more.
after you sold 10, it's not 6,000, but it might serve 10 or 20 or 18 or however.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's very, very limited in terms of, if you look at what the cost per person is, that is more realistic is what the cost per person, or half that, for example, on level 2 is a practical matter, if multiple people are using it.
Are you only counting people who live in a building with the charging attached, or like in Burlington, are you counting everyone who can see it?
So it is both, so Champlain will have some numbers for you, we were talking the other day, and so
Mhm.
for their equipment, it's something like over 700 units.
Right.
Have, with the 6,000, I will say, a large portion of that does come from Burlington's project,
So, yeah.
which, you know, is huge, but even so, for all of this, you know, there's one location that has 10 units, and I don't remember off the top of my head, you know, we asked them in their application, like, how many tenants
Yeah.
is this gonna be accessible to, but it's a lot. It's not enough to serve all tenants, but it is signaling to those tenants and it's providing that access.
Mhm.
Now, it kicks off, hopefully, that sort of chicken and egg thing, right? We put the equipment in, a tenant sees that it's accessible, they buy an EV, they start using it, and the property owner says, wow, this is working, and now I have another tenant, so I am gonna have to scale up, and then
But
they already have some
you've
experience.
also invested in conduit and infrastructure that might be able to handle more charging stations in the future in the same parking lot.
In the pilot program, we did, one of the eligible costs was what we call future proofing. So
Right.
you're already going in and doing panel upgrades, then make sure that there's enough capacity for more stations in the future. You're already doing conduit, make sure that it's out to multiple parking spaces. So you did cover those costs as well.
Okay, Senator Cummings.
No, I'll ask Champlain Housing that.
Okay.
If this is perpetually subsidized housing, and I'm just wondering how many people that are of an income level that requires that their rent be subsidized, how many of them can we realistically expect to be able to afford a $50,000 car? Now, maybe in a few years, I know we've made an effort to get them, or hybrids, to get them down into the second hand
Used.
market, but
Yeah.
I'm,
There are
Well,
quite a few that are.
Let's ask if do you have data on the average cost that would end up being marketed to somebody in a perpetually affordable housing complex? Would you be saying, hey, you can get a used Nissan Leaf for $15,000? So do you have a figure around that?
I don't, that would be something.
Vermont the transportation, I asked if we could have someone from, Rob, do you have like some answer about what someone might be able to afford an EV for at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the prices are going down on new ones.
Sure are.
And basically, I just know somebody personally just purchased a Nissan Ariya for $36,000 with all the incentives out there.
Okay.
So,
A new,
and a brand new one.
Yeah.
So, but you see, the more EVs that get on the market, it lowers the cost in the used market, and that's the trajectory we're going on.
right,
So we're gonna have more accessible
okay,
shortly, but the overall cost,
Right.
I don't know.
Senator Clarkson, and then we should move on to the question of how you feel about the bill and if changes would add value. If a bill with some changes would add value to your work, Senator Clarkson.
I was gonna say the same thing, Rob, they're going down and we're having more because more people are leasing EVs because the technology is evolving so fast. They're being encouraged to lease them. That means there's more secondhand ones that'll be available in the market.
Right,
Quite a bit. And I would just say multi-unit level 1 does not work with many people
Okay.
charging their car.
We're
because you
not-
can't do
we're
that.
not gonna get into that argument right now, and that's not our area of specialty.
It's
You know,
not.
we're here to talk about whether or not this empowers tenants
Right.
to further participate. And your point is well taken about a starting point being a much cheaper sticker price for, the average duplex, tenant to say, oh, okay, we can get a level 1 and that meets my family's needs right now.
Yeah.
So we're leaving that there, and we should skip ahead to, how you feel about the bill.
Yeah, so let me just really quick, so this was mostly on the pilot program. That was sort of a test run, but as we were doing the test run, we also just got a lot more money to keep the program going and expand it. So the other program the new program that I haven't touched on yet.
Yeah.
Is essentially $7 million to,
And that's federal money?
this is state.
Oh, okay. This is
state
the
funds.
governor's. thing. Yeah.
So we have kicked off this program that essentially expands all the work we were doing.
Okay.
It increased accessibility to 3+ units. It is no longer just affordable, so this is also market rate housing is eligible. It also includes workplaces, understanding that, you know, that's great for some reasons, but it's also great for tenants, because again, if you're not gonna see charging in your home, maybe you're gonna have it at work. It's the
Yeah.
network that's really important. So this program, you know, it's much larger, and we're talking much bigger numbers at this point. I'm gonna skip through some of these, you all have them, and feel free to reach out to me if you have questions, but at this point with this program, we're talking about 375 applications. One of the things that we learned in the pilot was that these are challenging projects, even with property owners who are engaged and want to do this. It's just a lot to take on. The program that we are administering with support from GMP is helping to overcome some of those challenges by connecting, you know, 376 excited property owners, to connect them with contractors, to help them walk through what kind of solutions can work for their property. So I think my biggest concern with this is that at this point, we are running this program assuming that a tenant or a third-party service provider can also apply for these funds. They just need to have sign off from the property owner, because the property owner, you know, needs to get permission if you're doing trenching.
Yes. Right.
At this point, we are just assuming that if you have a property owner sign off, it's enthusiastically participating property owner. And even then, it's still challenging. It takes a lot of time back and forth doing these solutions, trying to figure out these solutions.
Have you had tenants come forward and say, you know, I heard about this program. Can I be the one to get the sign off and make this happen?
The tenant would always have to get sign off from their property.
No, I know, but have you had tenants come forward? Are you working with a tenant right now, as the lead communicator?
I don't know. That would be a good question. I can follow up and find out.
Okay.
But I think mostly it is property owners that have submitted applications saying we want to have equipment at our property.
This is a very helpful one for us to know about private landlords. Because what's really hard for us to tell, and you're in this situation, right? You are someone who's not used to asking your landlord for things or feeling empowered to go find government programs to help you. And we asked Burlington Electric, would this help you market directly to tenants more and involve them more in the first stage of the process? And they said yes. So the question for you is there, I will speak for myself. I always get frustrated that so many of the programs we fund don't get to the lowest income people in Vermont. There are so many barriers they face, and does this remove a barrier for them to access money that they deserve to have access to?
I think more marketing to tenants to say this program exists, like for a tenant to say, hey, landlord, did you know this exists? Would be great. I think for me, the concern is that if there's a bill in place and the tenant can say to the landlord, you have to do this, and now we have tenants who are sort of begrudgingly signing off on this.
You mean landlords who are begrudgingly signing off on this? Okay.
Would tie up fund, would make those projects even more challenging and potentially tie up our funds on projects that just don't actually have buy-in from the property owner, and that's just, that it's potentially challenging for us.
Okay, so that I would say is the crux of the issue is if you feel like this could have a negative impact on the projects you're advancing, or if you think it would increase the number of applications and you would be able, my question with that 376 is, are you funding all of them anyway? And
no, and we don't really need more applications at this point unless we get additional funds.
You mean you're too popular?
Property owners are interested in this,
Yeah.
especially if there's support for it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I would hate to get some
Right.
negative blowback on this program.
yeah,
Because there's.
yeah. So we'll move to CHT in a few minutes. I think this still leaves a question for me around the demographics of who has the wherewithal to apply, right? I mean, are people at the perpetually affordable housing sites now taking up, or, is anyone collecting any data to say, a higher proportion of low-income residents now say, I feel comfortable in the next 2 years making an EV purchase, and here's what I need to do that. Are we looking at the income demographics of, who's in your applicant pool, to see basically how well we're serving the full state with these programs? I mean, yes, it's important for you to have money, but not if it's just going to, middle and upper class landlords and tenants, and not ever trickling down to people who otherwise can't participate. That's what government money is for.
Yeah, I think so. Again, maybe speaking a little bit as a tenant as well.
Mhm.
If I were to look at this legislation, I would say, like my property, the way it's set up, it would be more likely one of those $26,000 installations. And
Okay.
I would say I'm fairly middle class. That's not helpful to me.
Yeah.
What's helpful is for the property owner to make those investments, the panel upgrades, the conduit, and then maybe if I buy an EV and I get one of those free chargers, then I can own the charger and I can put it in.
Have you talked to your landlord about this?
I have no comment.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I have a landlord and I'm
Yeah.
like, if I say anything on the record right now, I
Yeah.
could be, my lease can be terminated at any point. So
Yeah.
it's this bill, I don't think is as helpful
Mhm.
as our program is.
Mhm.
That's not to say it couldn't be helpful for some. I think, single family homes, smaller properties where those costs are likely lower to be able to
Mhm.
install, maybe this helps a bit. But I think my experience so far with a lot of these property owners is they're not unwilling to do it as long as there's a little bit of support. So as a tenant, I would rather just have a conversation with my landlord
Mhm.
and say, here are these programs, here's the support, let's do this together.
Yeah.
Rather than try and hold their feet to the fire. It's not worth it.
Okay.
Tell the market's tight here.
Yeah, no, I'm probing to see if we move this bill forward after today. Senator Cummings.
If our goal is to help lower income people be able to afford EVs, a program that's in our bill that says, well, you can do it if you pay all the
Yeah.
Sure.
costs. That's not helping lower income people. This bill that says there's money there and there's a program, and then I'm the landlord, and I got this guy, I don't know what he knows, and he's hiring a contractor and they're messing in my whole electric system.
Right. Yeah.
I would see a program that has some money behind it being more helpful.
I think what this says is whether it's solar panels or energy efficiency or vehicle charging, our committee needs to know each year that this is getting to renters and mobile home park residents and lower income people. And so we may not move forward with the bill, but asking for better data each year so that we know if this is a good public investment. Because I think what we hear back all the time is middle income people are the ones who get subsidies for solar panels on their roofs. Middle income people are the ones who get X, Y, or Z that we pay for. And is that how we best spend our money? I completely agree with you that the more people that see an EV charging station, the better. So maybe your program is working better than most and we can learn from it. But our committee has always had an unmet interest in how well all of these programs are working for renters particularly, which is our purview. Senator Harrison, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I'm just trying to limit my question. So, just to speak to Senator Cummings' point about benefit, I think this is where single family renters of single family properties could benefit by this. Because it would be less
Right.
expense on the renter.
And it sounds like your money
And there are
goes
a
to
lot
3
of
units
them.
or more.
There are a lot of them.
So
that
could
might be
this,
helpful.
does it help to advance this bill for single family homes and duplexes right now? Does it not hurt you if you do that?
Yeah, because they're not eligible for funding.
Right.
So it would be something.
It's something,
And it would be helpful to find out how many of the homes are like that.
a lot. I mean, I'm just gonna go.
No,
with
I
it.
guess,
Right, a lot.
I believe it is
Yeah.
too.
And the other thing I'll say really quickly is that I think for condos,
Mhm.
because as a condo owner,
Yes.
you have more skin in the game, you own the property longer, you could sell the equipment.
And this does have a whole piece about community
Yes.
ownership or whatever it's called.
Right.
Mobile home parks. Do you work with any mobile home parks?
We did not have any applications in the first round. They are still they are eligible. It has to do with the number of units on a parcel.
Mhm.
And again, whether they have dedicated sort of garage parking. So we've not had, I don't think, a whole lot of interest from mobile home parks.
Have you tried to get, like, it would be a great case study.
We
If you can
did a lot of
lure
outreach
them in.
to them in the pilot
Okay.
program.
Yeah.
We emailed, reached out to
Yeah.
all the mobile home parks that we had information for. and
Yeah.
We just didn't see applications for it.
Right.
So, certainly an area where we can dig in more and just kind of find out why weren't they interested in this.
Yeah.
What ways does the program not necessarily serve their needs or their tenants?
I think that would be a future question for us. Senator Clarkson.
So I'm thrilled with your program. I think it's great start. And I definitely think this incentive has to be with the landlord. They have the skin in the game. And I think we need to spend our public money providing purchase incentives for continuing our purchase incentives on the cars for lower income people. So that lower income people can access cars, whether they're used or new. One of our state reps just bought a fairly low income family who just bought a new car, incredible incentives, and got it way down. So I think that's where our public money is better spent on tenants right now, and really incenting landlords, both public landlords, affordable housing landlords, and some private to make this investment, because this is an investment for them for future tenants. And even with single family homes, I think it's the landlord that's got to make that decision. It's their property. They need to, and we just need to incent them to do it. And we need to encourage renters and tenants to ask. And do you know about this? And here is this opportunity for you.
So you run a program though that is not doing any marketing to single family homes or duplexes right now. So the
Which you could do. I mean, rent
Well,
off you could do.
they have limited funds and they're not eligible for their program, so that
They
would
have
make
limited
sense.
Now,
Well, they're not eligible for their program, so.
I think it's a good, I think at this point, I think folks that are, interested in EVs and EVSE kind of find their way towards I don't think we would do a hard outreach specifically to tenants of single family, because it's not, our program is not gonna help them.
Yeah.
And again, I think, I'll leave it at that.
Madam Chair, can I just?
Yeah.
One more thing. So, I don't know how often we're gonna see you in this committee. But
Maybe more.
something that I've noticed just in the program is that sometimes the chargers are not as reliable as they could be, and I think some companies are more reliable than other companies. So do you specify specific companies? I don't know if you can do that. And have you considered doing some sort of state contract where the state would contract with one or multiple companies, and then landlords or whoever could purchase off of a state contract so that it's less expensive and it's more coordinated? Because it's really difficult dealing with some of the providers.
General sense, not a formal evaluation, but general sense is level 3 equipment tends to have more reliability issues, and a lot of that has to do with just the level of power that's there. Public stations can have some challenges with broadband connectivity, but I think they're kind of ironing out a lot of that. Sorry, your second part of the.
Well, yeah,
Oh, do we have a
I've
list?
just experienced a lot of problems with the public system.
We don't, our grant programs provide criteria for what the equipment needs to be able to do, pretty standard, kind of, NEMA certified. If it's public, it needs to be CTEP certified. There's a lot of technical, but we don't advocate for particular brands of equipment at this point. At some point in the future, we may be able to put out like an RFQ or something and have sort of a pre-qualified list of equipment. But BGS, I know, does that already, so maybe we would be able to sort of dovetail off what they've already done to sort of vet equipment. I will say the other thing too is that a lot of that has focused on public-facing equipment, and again, a lot of our program does not require public, and so that just kind of opens up a whole other world of solutions that, again, a property owner just needs to be aware of what they need and want as opposed to us I think, limiting those options for them.
Right.
Right, so I was just thinking about a state
Yeah.
contract,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is a different kind of
Yeah,
thing, where
right.
the state would put out a bid and then get bids back, and then individuals would be able to purchase off of that.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
we don't have to talk about it more.
No, I mean, we should include Amy in the conversation, and if you wanna stay in the minister, that's fine, because it might be a both and. And then we should reserve 5 minutes or so at the end to decide if and how we move forward with the bill. Hi, Amy, thanks for your patience.
Hi.
Thanks for being with us.
Yes, I'm really, I'm excited to join the conversation. I do have, a short prepared statement that I'd just like to read, and then really happy to answer any questions, and again, just join the conversation. So for the record, I'm Amy Demetrowitz. I'm the COO of the Champlain Housing Trust. I think most of you know us. We're a nonprofit dedicated to affordable housing development across Chittenden, Franklin, and Grand Isle counties. Currently, we manage a diverse portfolio of over 2,500 affordable apartments. They range from mixed-use downtown buildings to historic duplexes and fourplexes in Burlington's Old North End, multi-building apartment campuses, new multi-story apartment buildings. We have a whole range of different types of properties. We strongly support the impetus behind Bill S-271, the right to charge. We're committed to assuring that renters, particularly low-income renters, have the ability to charge their electric vehicles at home, and that a lack of infrastructure doesn't deter anyone from going electric. All of our new construction projects include EV chargers. And we recently participated in the grant program administered by ACCD. That initiative gave us the funding and technical support to install charging stations at 10 existing properties in Chittenden and Franklin counties. It provided charging for 700 renter households based on the properties. By targeting some of our largest sites, including one that has 160 apartments on it, we aimed to maximize the availability for our tenants. So far, we've seen limited use, but it's not been that long. We've seen about 25 cars per month over the 10 properties, but we want our properties to be ready for the future. In addition, we worked with BED to install a community charger at the Old North End Community Center in Burlington, providing a public charging station to this low-income neighborhood. There are some apartment configurations where a tenant-initiated installation of an EV charger would be straightforward, and the proposed bill would adequately cover issues of cost, risk, and ownership. However, while we support the underlying goals of S-271, we have experienced the complexities and challenges of installing EV chargers, particularly in multifamily housing with diverse architectural and parking configurations. Our experience shows that in multifamily housing, communal charging stations owned and installed by the property owner are the best approach. The variables when considering installations include proximity of the parking to the electric meter and whether parking is assigned per unit. Parking configurations vary from large communal surface lots, under building communal garages, and in our portfolio less frequently, carports, individual driveways, and assigned parking. The type of parking and its proximity to power will impact the complexity of the installation itself. If an apartment, such as in a duplex, has a driveway connected to the unit, an installation would be fairly simple. However, in our portfolio, we only have a handful of that unit type. The vast majority of our parking is communal, unassigned, and not adjacent to the building. This type of parking requires much more complex installation, including trenching of electrical service and chargers on poles. The type and location of electrical service per site also varies. Is each apartment individually metered? Is there one building meter? Is the service adequate for a charger? What is the proximity of the meter to the parking? What side of the building does the service enter? It's unreasonable to expect a tenant to navigate these questions and complexities without a full partnership with the property owner. Mandated permission is not enough. Once installed, the questions of ownership and use pose additional challenges. Is the landlord responsible to police use of the charger that is owned by a tenant? This is an issue in communal lots, even if the landlord designates that spot for that tenant. The bill attempts to address options for the charger when the tenant leaves, but the details of removal or passing on to the next charger when the charger is in a communal lot will be complex. We support the intentions of S 271 to empower tenants with the right to install EV chargers. As we move forward into a future where electric vehicles become the norm rather than the exception, ensuring that all members of our community have equal access to necessary infrastructure is critical. This is particularly true for tenants in affordable housing who should not be left behind in the green transition. The feasibility of installations in smaller buildings with designated parking is clear and prevents a straightforward path for tenant-installed EV chargers. Yet in larger buildings without designated parking, the complexity significantly increases. In these cases, state support of incentive programs like the EVSE grant program, where the landlord works with the utility consultants to install communal chargers available to all tenants, is the approach that has the best chance of success. So basically, I'm saying the same conclusion that you all have come to through this conversation. I think it's really important for the state to continue to support incentives for landlord-installed communal charging stations that are accessible then to all tenants who live at the property. I'm very happy to participate in the conversation, answer any questions.
Okay, questions?
I'm just thinking, thinking out loud that the designated parking might be the way we define who would be eligible for this.
Yeah.
Same more.
Say, I mean, right now we're saying folks who live in units or developments of more than 5 parking places. I mean, we're defining the eligible group as people, just residents who live in multifamily developments of more than 5 parking spaces. But it might be more logical or just, better to have the folks who are eligible be folks who live in a multifamily or actually just say rental situation where they have dedicated parking.
I think the challenge with that is that when you think about tenant turnover, then you're looking for a tenant that is, especially if it's set up where that parking space is attached to that tenant's meter, then no other tenant could use it moving forward. You'd have to find a tenant that actually has an EV. It becomes a little, I think shared infrastructure at multi-unit there's a really strong case to be made for that, especially in early days.
Oh, no, I agree with you. I'm just trying to find a way to have this work with single family rentals and duplex rentals where it's like a owner occupied place except for the rental component. But physically it's like an owner occupied place.
Yeah. I think the dedicated parking doesn't quite get there though, because you could have a 10-unit, 10 parking space
Right.
that's dedicated parking,
Yeah.
and that could be challenging. So
Right.
just to say it's a little sticky. So.
Yeah. But then
I
it
agree,
could
though. I
also be
think what you want to say is that it's parking that is adjacent to your unit in a single family home situation or a duplex situation, where you might actually need to sort of compel the landlord to allow the tenant to install that equipment. And it's likely more of a level 1 charger at that point as well, easier to be removed. But I think as the bill as it's written, it's saying that you're exempt. The landlord does not have to accept the request if you have fewer than 5 parking spaces, which certainly would be the case in a single family home or a duplex.
right.
So,
Right. I was proposing to change that language, that criteria.
exactly.
Senator Clarkson.
No, I've landed where you have landed. I support the program and I think shared infrastructure is the way to go. I think if we pass this, I would want to focus it very much just on duplexes and on single family dwellings, single family rental buildings. Because I think for all the reasons both of you have identified, designated spots. I mean, just now having owned an EV for a week, I could see all the challenges with that. Even as
Congratulations.
well, yeah,
What kind of?
that's because I got hit by a deer, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my car got totaled, so I had to be a good senator and walk the talk. And replace that
We're
car
all
with an
good
EV.
senators.
So now I can tell you why I really
Yeah.
don't like level 1 charging.
So Amy, you're a COO, right? So you might not interact as much with the tenants themselves. do you hear any anecdotal information? Would CHT be open to collecting better data so we know how the visibility of these charging stations might be changing the potential outlook for low-income families?
Yes, we are able to collect usage data directly from the chargers. So we are tracking that. It does seem like it's increasing. Keep in mind that they haven't all been installed for all that long. But yes, we're absolutely going to continue to collect that data and we'll be happy to share it.
Can I tag on that? Which is, are you doing anything, Amy, to actually market this option now that they're installed? Are you doing anything to market this with your residents?
We're going to continue to do that. We've included it just in like property-wide newsletters that go out to our residents. But we're going to continue to sort of beef up that marketing, get that information out to folks, and especially around the different incentives that are available for the purchase.
And I imagine one of the most finite resources of all that has nothing to do with money has everything to do with money, is labor. Are you finding that it takes a lot longer than you anticipated to get the contracted workers to install the conduit or the stations themselves?
I wasn't directly involved in the installation, but my understanding is there actually were quite a number of challenges. Some of it was finding subcontractors. As Bronwyn was saying, some of it is the electric service to the property isn't adequate. It needs to be upgraded. There's the different avenues to get, like the exact path of trenching that's required and how much concrete do you need to go under and how much pavement. So they were very complex installations. It's not an easy thing. I think that there have been a lot of lessons learned in that process, and we're going to continue to have that be a little bit more streamlined and understand how to move forward. But it's been a great pilot program because it has installed a number of chargers and there have been a lot of lessons learned.
Mm-hmm. And are you doing a combination of levels 1, 2, and 3 charging stations, or are you exclusively doing one? Meaning
doing
a
two.
single one, level 2?
Yeah, we're only doing level 2. All of the ones that we've installed have been level 2. Including the community charger at the Old North End Community Center.
So it's at a certain level of units, it's a level with the level 2 is the required.
Level 3 is not a great solution for places where people park for 6 to 8 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Level 3 is great for public, sort of that gas station model. In our pilot program, this was before I did I think a good job of advocating for level 1. But in our pilot program, level 1 was only eligible if they were also installing a level 2.
Okay.
In this most recent round, there is some interest in level 1. There are folks, but often it's that they're combining level 2 and level 1, essentially giving their tenants the option to say, do you need to charge every night? Then level 2. If you don't really need to charge every night, or if you just need a top off and level 1 is good for you, then here you go as well.
Senator Clarkson, did you?
Yeah, no, I mean, with shared infrastructure, level 2, you can really give a good charge in 3 hours. So if you want to share the infrastructure, I mean, I was able to charge my car at 6 last night, picked up at 9, and somebody else could come in at 9 and charge it overnight or something. I think shared infrastructure, you have to be thoughtful, and thoughtful is not level 1.
Right.
That just takes all day.
Okay. So unless there are more questions, I would like to move to committee discussion on it.
An article.
I will say, Amy, you please do stay for the discussion if you can.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to.
Whether it's this session or next session, I think we'd love to hear from at least one of the 25 vehicle owners that, are using your charging stations to the extent that they live in Champlain Housing Trust Housing. To really, we need to start hearing directly from those most impacted about the barriers they're facing. And if other committees aren't doing that, we need to do that.
That's a great idea.
So please just be, if you haven't ever been asked to try and find a family that's willing to communicate with us, that's the ask we're making. Well, they don't have to be a model of anything. They just have to tell us what's not working.
We can also ask through our grant program, because in our
Right.
communications, I have been hearing from other
Yeah.
grantees that like,
Right.
hey, we have someone that already owns an EV and they are really dying for us to put this, so we have some
Yeah,
anecdotal stuff,
yeah.
so I'm happy to reach out to our grantees and say,
That's
who
great.
are you talking to? And kind of get some folks that might be interested in telling you their experience.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll-
Senators.
We'll definitely reach out and find some folks.
Okay, sorry, Amy, go ahead.
Sorry.
We'll definitely reach out and see if we can find some folks who'd be willing to come down and talk to you all about it.
Thank you. So, barring further questions, I think I'd like to go around the room and see where people are. There are 6 things I've written down that could be considered in a bill for Friday. And the question on the table is, are we considering something that we would vote out on Friday, or are we looking at this issue more long-term for a longer period of time? The 6 issues are whether we focus on 1 and 2 unit rentals, how well this is working or not for mobile home parks. Do we want to ask for better data in a formal way? I wrote down if there's a tax credit available to landlords to help with participation. I know that's Senator Cummings' favorite subject. I heard a question from Senator Harrison about whether we focus on designated parking. And my last consideration is the value of this for the condo associations and the places where there might be barriers because of shared governance. If we were to go down that road, it would be a big question if we could come to agreement by Friday, because we have not heard from those groups. So that's all what's on the table. I'll just go around the room with whoever wants to start.
I'm concerned about doing anything right now that involves a mandate on landlords.
Mhm.
We've got a housing crisis. Every time we do something to tinker with this, it takes longer and more difficult to get housing up, the more we slow this process down. And that's 1. 2, I don't have enough data to feel comfortable that this is the right approach. It may be in the future at some point. I'd like to have some data that matches vehicle ownership with income level. I mean, I can conceptually see how it's very easy to do if you get access to the information, or if someone gets access to the information, is take all the license plate numbers of EVs that are registered in Vermont and match it by the name of the owner to the tax data. That would give us the answer in the aggregate.
If tax was willing to share.
Yeah, well, but, and there are issues there, but we don't have a whole lot of
Right.
data. We hear that maybe lower income people are buying these to some extent, but certainly with a view towards putting in an affordable housing complex, I don't have the data to make me at all comfortable about going in that direction at this point.
So you're in the better data.
I'm in the better data, and
It's always-
maybe next, well, I am.
That's
And
always.
Where we all,
also-
yes.
I'm also recognizing that, to the extent that we talk about subsidies that some people are talking about, we don't have any money.
Mhm.
We can't spend money right now.
Mhm.
We can't.
Okay,
Well, respect.
well, everyone gets their turn to speak, so.
Okay,
Senator Harris.
so
Yeah.
one thing we haven't talked about recently, which was a purpose of the bill, was to allow renters to be eligible for existing subsidies from the power companies to get a level 2 charger that's made for, I'm gonna say single family use. Because, for example, at my house, my husband and I both use the same charger and it works out great. If it was level 1, it wouldn't be good for 2 cars, but the level 2 is perfect. And it makes it so we, avoid gas, which is really helpful, financially and environmentally. So if we constricted this bill to just, and I think designated parking doesn't make sense. I like the parking accessible from the unit. So single family and duplexes, and perhaps not require the landlord, because I do see the disadvantages to that. But clearly make the renters eligible for that existing subsidy, because that is a big incentive to do the work. And it would be a lot less expensive for the person if they just had to install,
So,
pay for the installation of the equipment. So two pieces of data that I don't know that I would like to know before we proceed on this bill. And
mhm,
then there's other data I would like to know for the future. But what I would like to know for this is, are renters eligible for that subsidy? I got, we had
They're
one from
not.
Green Mountain Power.
right. I mean, well, if the money comes from you and that's the only
Well,
money
it's
there
a
is.
free,
Okay.
it's more than it's a free, charger that you can get.
It goes with the car, not with the property. So if you buy an EV, you get, GMP will give you.
Right, but you have to
a charger.
install it.
I don't know the GMP aspect.
Let's for a minute.
Well, yeah, some OEMs, you go and you buy the car and you get some type of charger. Sometimes it's just the cord for a level 1 trickle charge. Sometimes it will come as an incentive with a home level 2. That you have that, but then the challenge is, can I install it? And can I install it in my property?
Right,
And that charger might not work at a property unless there is a panel upgrade and a trenching, et cetera. So I hear what you're saying in terms of like, tenants don't have access to those incentives that are out there, so yes. But I don't know that this bill is gonna help them, again, because you get the charger for free, but if you're still having to do the panel upgrade, if you're still having to do the trenching, that's just more cost.
All right.
So, I don't know what the solution to that is.
well, I think it would help some people, because the variable cost is the trenching and the panel.
We'd have to be very specific by Friday. So when you say
Right.
eligible for subsidy, which subsidy?
The subsidy of the charger, of getting the charger, because right now that is from GMP. The one I'm talking about is from GMP, which is separate than what I got from the car, with the car, because I also did get a level 1.
Wouldn't the person who pays the electric bill to GFP be they're usually the one who's
Yes.
communicating with them anyway?
Yes, that is how it works now.
Yeah.
So I doubt that those renters would be eligible. If we can make them eligible, I mean, that's a whole different thing.
Rob.
Yeah, it's my understanding that GMP does not allow you to install that charger they give you if you don't own the property.
Okay,
So that's where it covers,
Yeah.
they can't install that GMP
okay,
meter onto that, they charge them.
Right,
okay.
so then and that's how it should be. I mean, the property owner should have to, approve a change to the property.
So then this bill wouldn't do
So-
anything because your intent is still that the property owner has to be the one to initiate.
Give the approval, but then the
Uh-huh.
tenant could pay. And the tenant would be paying less than they would in a multifamily home.
So I think that modifies the question on the table to a tentative one of, can you produce some extremely specific language by Friday, and are people willing to entertain that? We probably wanna limit more than it existing on the agenda, just looking at how much things are getting backed up
Right.
by Friday.
Right.
So I'm letting people also answer the question of, do you wanna see Senator Harrison do some more work on this? Senator Cummings.
Well, incentives are something that are done by car dealerships or utilities. I think, and there's a cost to that,
Yeah.
which the ratepayers are paying if it's a utility. I think before we start changing regulations, we ought to hear from Burlington Electric, probably should hear from the utilities about what that cost would be and how these things work. I'm concerned, I guess, having heard people that do this, about the technical challenges. And just to say to any tenant, if you're willing to pay for it, you can get it, you can do it. I think that's likely to put a rift between some landlords and some tenants, which might lead to some fictions.
We heard that.
Yeah. That I think putting some money behind your mouth is a much better incentive, and it sounds like that's what this program is doing. I'd like to hear from condos before we mandate it if they're considered single family. they come in all different sizes. Some of them have a garage in some units, and some of them you walk down the street to that unit. And there's all technical things about digging up town roads,
Mhm.
because some of those units are now on town roads. So I don't want to create a bigger problem than we already have, until we're really sure about how this is gonna work.
Senator Clarkson.
I think we should be incenting landlords to do this and encouraging tenants to ask. So I think that there is room for single family and duplex asking, but I think we should be providing an incentive to landlords to do this. Not tenants, because tenants move, I think that's not the investment. The investment really needs to be in buying a car, which exists. And particularly it exists for lower income. It's tied to your income. Some of the incentives are tied to your income. And I think that's all headed in the right direction. EVs come with a charger so that you can plug it into a house. If you rent a house now, you can just plug it in with an outdoor
level
cord and an extension cord and
Right.
plug your car, which is why I know how a level one works, because it charges at 3 miles an hour, just to give you notion.
No, I know.
It's not.
I don't use.
So, yeah, exactly. So it does come.
Yeah.
If you are desperate, you can just plug it into your, if you have an outdoor pocket, you can plug it in and a renter in a single family home could charge at the moment. So it's, so I would rather incent landlords. We have incentives in place for purchasing. I'm happy to increase those incentives for income base. But I think it makes sense for anything that's based on a property for a landlord to be incented into doing what they need to do for the 21st century.
Does DHCD also, I mean, this is great for electric vehicles. We know that renters miss out on a lot of energy efficiency programs. Is DHCD dedicating time and personnel to other energy related programs and infrastructure, or just EVs?
Chris Hopper with Department of Housing and Human Development. Is this what, I mean, it's not my space, but I know, we try to tie the weatherization programs, the infrastructure programs are all targeted. At low moderate income, but
Do you get involved in that at all? Do you help Efficiency Vermont say, hey, let's partner with this housing?
not our time.
VHIP, I mean, our own VHIP program is all about weatherization, because it's focused on blighted, vacant, non-code compliant, and non-weatherized homes. So
Right.
any one of those qualify for VHIP money, and that's a big incentive.
Right. I think this is great, what you do, and I think this divide is large in so many contexts of how we meet the moment for our climate future. So more people like you, in the administration, reducing barriers for people to participate in a renewable energy future is important. And when I feel we can have Efficiency Vermont, and we can have others, and when we talk to them, we learn after the fact, oh, we had this great program for low-income homeowners, but that's a very narrow market, and we had to give money back because low-income homeowners who have the capacity to do X, Y, or Z is low. And in other states, there are nonprofits specifically dedicated to helping people fix their roofs, upgrade their electrical, and do all the things they need to do to participate. And I think, frankly, we're behind on tying home upgrades to low-income participation in energy.
But if I'm a tenant and if I've got knob and tube wiring, I'm gonna put lots of money into that house. I have now invested thousands of dollars to get my EV charger. And my job gets transferred and I move. Do I have a right to get that $10,000 investment back because he's gonna keep that charger and it's an asset to him and I've rewired his entire house?
Right. So I'm not disagreeing with you.
They're just legal questions.
Right. I'm saying how much I value someone dedicated to making this infrastructure visible in low-income communities. Those positions exist in other states for all kinds of renewable energy infrastructure. So that we're paying attention to, does this neighborhood have solar panels? Does this neighborhood have visual infrastructure that people can see that make them feel like a part of this change? And I would value hearing more from folks like you in this committee about how renters, mobile home park residents, and low income people participate and how they don't, because a lot of these programs, you're only eligible if you are a low income homeowner who meets this unicorn level criteria that we end up giving money back for.
Or you own
Yeah.
property, and if you don't,
Exactly.
then you're out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing a path forward for this by Friday. I will leave open a glimmer of hope that if stakeholders get together and have agreement from the other relevant stakeholders, like the utilities or the condo association folks, that we would consider something on Friday, but I'm not seeing something that is ready for a vote on Friday.
But we could continue the work.
But thank you. I hope it's
Yes,
clear that I would like to continue the work and pay more attention to this issue in our committee, because I don't have a strong feeling that there's attention on this issue in enough places in the legislature.
And we can also encourage our transportation committees to be addressing this too, because they are working with all sorts of
Yes,
incentives.
yes.
And I think they are
Right,
working hard.
well, and just so people are clear, House Transportation asked us to do this because it's landlord tenant law and because they feel so ill-equipped to help tenants participate in these programs, so it really is our jurisdiction.
Oh, sure, you know,
Yeah.
we also need to marry one crowd that's working with a lot of these incentives.
Yes, this is one of those things that falls between the cracks, and we should pay more attention to our piece of the jurisdiction. So I really appreciate the work on this. I don't think it was wasted time.
No, this was.
And I really appreciate what you all do, because it is true that the more visibility and trust people have in this infrastructure, the more we're creating equity in our transitions for the future. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Bronwyn, this was great.
I'm gonna send you an article.
Okay.
Only one?
Joe.
Yes,
really
I-
pointed one. That's all it
So-
takes.
No.
Committee, we are meeting at 8:30 AM tomorrow to finish our veggie work. We did confirm we will have Joan Goldstein. I hope we can also get Cassie. Of the 14th, okay. Well, what we need is a statement via somebody from PETA that they are comfortable with this program as with the language generally that we have. So 8:30 tomorrow morning, and there's a chance that we're moving forward more language, so try to get your questions about